4 out of the 5 days a week. So we've kind of been living with what might be new for some of you for a while. So we have some excellent tips on that coming up. So I want to kind of talk about how we can be leaders in this uncertain climate. So we know that change is going to happen. It just simply will. There's nothing we can do about that. So we want to, I'm so sorry. Okay, so you're probably wondering how you can lead in these temporary and more permanent changes. And then why would this matter? This, of course, matters because if we can kind of lead the information brigade, so to speak, and we're kind of the first to embrace the changes, everyone will come on board with us and we will be able to reach out to more scouters. So, obviously in this situation, we have a global pandemic, but we also have a coalition of all of us trying to help the youth and community. We have a broad strategic vision of wanting to help Scouts at the same time as having a specific vision, we want to have a specific vision of how that might work in a digital age. We want to enlist our volunteer army. So after this meeting, it would be wonderful if you could then take this back to your pack, your committee, your den, and embrace these things. Make sure that we're generating short-term goals for ourselves, be really patient with ourselves. And then to kind of keep the movement, check in with people maybe more often than you might. Really good communication is key to this. And then you want to institutionalize what is great coming from this. And then, you can drop the other more difficult things. But for example, I think recording den meetings or having virtual den meetings could be a future tool for some packs. So that is kind of what I wanted to talk about in terms of stepping up during this uncertain time. Just reassure the parents that we're all in this together, and that should help you very much. Wendy, the next slide's you, so I'm going to mute myself.
All right. So in this exciting era of coronavirus, we have one of our options is to have virtual den meetings. I have not tried this out myself, but at our national meeting today, there was a national meeting, I picked up these tips to share with you on virtual meetings. So the first thought is to have a schedule for den meetings. Schedule them for twice a month, 4 times a month, whatever works for your dens. Give the kids something to look forward to each month, a particular day and time, just like you always. When you have your virtual den meeting, you do want to have multiple leaders. You always need to have 2 deep leadership, even if it is a virtual meeting. Also, they suggested that with multiple leaders, you can assign one particular person to be in charge of muting and dealing with technical issues. They recommended turning off the kids' cameras and their annotations. Apparently, in a virtual meeting, kids are still kids, and they will make faces, they might draw on their screens, and so if you don't want those distractions, it's a good idea to turn them off. Of course, you want to have your den meeting plan, and you can follow your regular den meeting plans. For instance, if you have an opening flag ceremony and recite the Scout Oath and Scout Law, you can still do that. You might want to make assignments for those sorts of things ahead of time so that the kids know that they're supposed to be reading the flag ceremony or carrying a 4th of July flag and planting it during the flag ceremony. In this virtual world, you can also have virtual guest visits as well as virtual trips for your den meeting. Next slide, please. So there are some adventures that are particularly coronavirus appropriate. Doing thank you posters for your community helpers. You can talk about citizenship and how, as good citizens, we need to do our part to prevent the spread of coronavirus. We can work as teams to prevent the infection. Germs Alive is obviously a really great adventure to do at this time. Hometown Heroes and Weeblos Build My Own Heroes talk about those community heroes that are really stepping up and going the extra mile to help us all. And there are some wonderful 30-day challenges for each of the rank out there with a fun activity for the kids to be doing each day to help continue their progress towards ranks. Next slide. As parents are attempting to deal with remote learning at home, they may, be kind of struggling with the whole concept, and there are a lot of really great scouting resources that can help them in their efforts. Particularly, parents may be especially intimidated by the idea of teaching their kids science. And we know there are lots of fabulous science activities from the kids' handbooks. I've listed some here on the PowerPoint. For tigers, Sky is the Limit, and the Magical Science Tricks adventure. For wolves, there are lots and lots of adventures. Air of the Wolf, Code of the Wolf, Motor Away. For bears, there's Forensics, Make It Move, Super Science. And for Weeblos and Arrow of Light, Adventures in Science, Earth Rocks, Engineer, Game Design, Into the Wild, and Into the Woods. Next slide. Of course, the kids are all spending a lot of time with their families, so it's a perfect time to be doing those more family-oriented adventures. Like for the lions, Animal Kingdom, I'll Do It Myself, Pick My Path. For tigers, Team Tiger, Earning Your Stripes, Family Stories, Tiger Safe and Smart. For wolves, there are some disaster preparedness activities and some related to chores. For bears, Pause for Action, Critter Care. For Weeblos and Arrow of Light, there's Fix It and Project Family. And of course, this is also a wonderful time to have fun. For lions, On Your Mark, Build It Up, Rumble in the Jungle. For tigers, Floats and Boats, Tiger Theater. For wolves, Adventures in Coins, Collections and Hobbies. For bears, Bear Claws, Marble Madness, Roaring Laughter. For Weeblos and Arrow of Light, Game Design and Movie Madness. Now, in the handouts that we will be distributing after our meeting tonight, there is a list of the adventures arranged by school topic, as well as some of the ideas for cooperative and team building games for those families that may be wanting to try and bring a little more harmony to the home. And so right now, I'd like to open up this as a discussion to the rest of you. I'm wondering if any of you have actually had any virtual den meetings, how it's worked for you, if you have any tips or tricks to pass on to the rest of us, and if you found some adventures that work particularly well for online meetings.
Feel free to unmute yourselves if you'd like to add to the community, to the conversation, then we'll just ask you to re-mute when you're done.
Well, it sounds like we are all learning about this together, so we hope to get some reports back from you for next month on how it's gone for you. Kat, I'll turn the meeting back over to you.
Thank you, Wendy. Can you all hear me? I'm going to take that as a yes, actually. So I have a little meme here about kind of the piles and clutter that will accumulate while you are potentially working at home or staying at home and now having to homeschool. So I have a kind of list of things that will really help the experience be more enjoyable, the kind of experience where it's, oh, I'm with my family, and not, oh, I'm with my family. So I do want to stress that all essential things will be open. So, gas stations, grocery stores, all of that. if you yourself are a nervous person, please go ahead and remind yourself of those things. Think about how fast Governor Inslee was, because this will be an anxiety-causing time for all of us. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there, that we do have the best information as we can. So while you are going to be doing this, it is really important to remember to be forgiving of yourself, forgiving of your children and spouse, others, and find humor in all of that. I promise at some point your worlds will feel like they are colliding in a negative way, but that's not the case. You will use your excellent communication skills to work through these things together as a family. Allow for some chaos in the ever-changing world, but control it. Don't allow it to control you. So that kind of goes back to my first, the part where I was first speaking, when I was talking about we can embrace some of these changes and pass them on to other people. An idea of just something easy that a pack could implement would be family recipe swap, because meal planning is really difficult if you haven't done it for 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, all day. You know, you might you might use some as a service or something else, and you've had to replace that. So a pack could do something like an online recipe swap, where each family or each scout posts a great recipe that's easy for them to make. And getting your scouts involved in that will really actually facilitate faster cooking and more cooperation, believe it or not. I did want to point out that going for a walk or a bike ride is great, but please don't bunch up or anything like that. We still want to try to be socially distancing, even when we're to get outside but together. So if you live in the same household, go ahead and take a walk together, but keep 6 feet distance. Work out in the indoors. Even if you don't normally do this, you probably walk more frequently than you think you do, and you're going to get pent up energy, and so will your kids. So working out indoors can be a great resource. A lot of streaming services are providing those for free. Also bring in natural light so that you have a bright space that you're working in, or make it completely dark if that's, I guess, how you keep your office. But kind of just try to make it as comfortable for yourself as you can. And I have found that if you let your employer and PAC leadership know about any at-home limitations, there are fewer issues. So, for example, barking dogs, kids running around. If you've told them in advance that might happen, it won't be jarring at the time. Whereas if all of a sudden a dog starts barking in the middle of what someone's saying, you might not be able to hear them or anything. But at least this way, we're setting up the expectations to be realistic. And then, okay, so I don't know if you guys remember this. This was a BBC presenter, and it was my favorite viral clip of all time, because you can see behind him, as he is actually on the news live, his daughter has walked in, and she'll be followed by a baby, and then the mom collecting them and scampering out. So just know that even professional level people have had issues that we can all laugh about and empathize with. And then my tips for kind of homeschooling your children. Keep your home and school separated still. So you might want to create a workspace, even if it's just part of your dining table or something like that. And don't let anger from maybe something in school that you're both getting frustrated about spill over into your home life. something my son does that I think is adorable is we say goodbye as teacher and student at the end of the day. And then he'll go down the stairs, come back up and say, "Hey, Mom," and tell me about his school day. So again, just kind of that semblance of normalcy and letting the children know what to expect, I think. And then also keep in mind you'll have a variety of tools on hand, different tools than you might normally have. You might be sharing your workspace with anywhere from a 5 to 11-year-old. So if it gets cluttered, that's okay. That's no one's fault. We'll all get through it. And really, again, let your child know what to expect. I think that would probably be the biggest takeaway if you take nothing else away. I put remember LAN parties, and for those of you who do, the idea here is sort of you can use Skype in a responsible way with adults supervising to play community games. Naturally, they would have to be age appropriate and things like that, but there's not a reason that they can't almost play with each other, but via FaceTime instead of in person with those types of looking at the screen type games. Make sure you have a clear start and stop to the school day so your child knows what they should be doing. And regardless of how you choose to educate your child at home, reading is the number one thing that these children can do to prepare themselves for a higher education later in life. The more a child reads is actually positively correlated with having an easier time in school later on. So if nothing else, just pull out a few books. I do caution that you don't want to be doing book swaps right now because germs can be on surfaces. But other than that, that's a great thing to be doing. Understand it's not going to be easy. Our teachers are paid, and they're paid for a reason. They are professionals, and they know how to deal with a lot of these situations. You do not. So don't expect it to be easy and go in forgiving yourself, and then you'll find it is actually easier. And I think I may have repeated a part, but create that workspace, carve it out wherever you think, and then utilize the. I'm sorry, is someone trying to ask a question? Okay. Speak up if you are. But so utilize the time that you have with your child to investigate courses that aren't taught as well in schools, such as the arts and music and things like that. If your child has an interest in coding, there's coding for kids and things like that out there for them, and that will enhance their overall education, even if it's not advancing their grade work. And then make sure that your family sits down together and carves out 1 hour of quiet for each of you. I know all the parents are laughing at me right now, but ideally you would each get 1 hour of quiet, but minimum you want at least 10 minutes to yourself just to decompress, because you will be receiving a lot more information than you usually do, and you don't want to get burned out very quickly. So with all of that said, I was curious if people had other working at home while homeschooling tips, and what your experiences have been, and open it up kind of to the participants.
Hey, Crystal, we have a few questions coming in from the chat side. So one question that came in was, is there any preferred service like Zoom, or is there another one that's more acceptable to use for doing this kind of education remotely and DEM meetings and things like that?
Okay, thank you for letting me know about that. I'm kind of on the PowerPoint. So the BSA doesn't have a specific recommended platform. You can use Zoom for free if it's in certain capacities and limited to a certain number and things like that. As you can see, we're using Google Hangouts, and Eric would actually be the one to tell you his experience with working with those. But I have found FaceTime and WhatsApp and those kind of communication things all work out as long as you are keeping your 2 deep leadership even virtually. So again, you want both parents on either side to be supervising that. And that's kind of where I think we care a lot less about what platform you use than
All right, we have one more question. Any advice on involving scouts that are den chiefs with the Cub Scouts?
Absolutely. So again, they can be the ones to set up some of these things and kind of get the pack involved. What do the other members have to say about that?
Krista, do you have a comment for that you want to add in, or another one?
Not for Gregory's question. I don't know that anybody has an answer for that, Gregory. I think we just need to work directly with the PACs to see how we can help them and let them know that we're available as a resource. So Gregory's in my troop. I'll work with him on that.
I would think that you could assign den chiefs a particular topic to demonstrate or cover during your virtual den meetings.
Yep. Yeah, that's great.
I have a question that's somewhat beyond this topic, but related, if that's okay, if there's no other questions.
Please.
So this is Stefan. I'm the Cub Master with PAC 639. And we have some moms they have only children and they feel isolated and they want to start Facebook groups and all sorts of things. And I go like, in my mind, I would love for the boys to connect and network. But I don't necessarily want 6 or 7 or 8-year-olds cruising around on Facebook. So my gut response is no to Facebook, because they can venture out, right? But anything that's a closed system, like a Zoom call or a Google Hangout call or something like that, seems to be making a lot more sense to me, seems to be a lot safer. Is there any official guidance or is there any other gut response from the audience here on the call?
So my response is, I'm sorry, Ken, what?
I was going to say, I do have a slide on that in the second session here on Scouts BSA, although it's in terms of groups and Scouts, and it more applies for things like boards or review. But anyway, I'll speak to that a little bit later. But if you've got an answer you want to share right now, that's great too.
I would say one. Go ahead.
You can see Krista has posted that Facebook requires that the children be 13 or older. So in a Cub Scouting situation, social media would not be the way to go. Stefan talking about the closed loop systems, that is where we want to keep that information. And we want to kind of reinforce cyberchip because people can take screenshots and this and that. And now is a really good time to kind of reinforce those ideas.
Hey, Kat, this is Chris Hoffman.
Yes. Hey, Chris. Bring me cookies.
I have a suggestion for that topic. I have a venturing crew, and none of the kids use Facebook. In fact, they told me that they need to get on Facebook to post advertising because that's where the old people are. So that's the philosophy of the young, is that Facebook is for the old. And my crew has been using a product called Discord. It's a chatting service. It's free. It's on the phone. It's on the desktop. It's a closed system, so you can definitely contain who gets to see the chats. It has voice recognition, and the best part about it is most youth probably already have Discord on their phone. They're already probably in one or two different Discord channels.
Yeah, that sounds like a great resource. I'm sorry.
Hey, this is Chris McNeil, District Executive. I'm just gonna do a quick comment since this is kind of close to what I was going to be talking about anyways on youth protection. I know Kat mentioned it a little bit earlier, but for any of these services that we use, we need to make sure that we continue to use Too Deep leadership. And that also includes, we don't necessarily want, I think Discord's a great service. I use it personally as well, but you also don't necessarily want a situation where you have just two people on there by themselves. Remember, Too Deep leadership doesn't just cover youth and adult, but also youth within more than 2 years of each other as well. So keep those in mind. So as long as we're using Too Deep leadership is really important. And then the other thing is a lot of these services, you may have the option to record or replay video. So before you do that, you need to make sure you have parent permission before you do any kind of recording or replaying of videos with youth on it. So I just wanted to put that out there right now.
Hey, Christopher, this is Chris Hoffman again. One of the ways we're able to get around or adhere to the Too Deep leadership is that when we use Discord, they have this concept of a channel. And the channels are public to all adults who are members of the Discord. So no conversation.
Again, I would like to remind you that you're talking about 5 to 10-year-olds, not teenagers. So I get that Discord is popular with the teenagers, and yes, I know it's used by a lot, but we're talking about 5 to 10-year-olds right now, and so we need to use tools that are appropriate for that age group. And I personally don't feel that Discord's appropriate for 5 to 10-year-olds.
So to piggyback off that, actually, we are kind of in the part of the meeting that is the Scouts BSA's time after Chris does the district announcements. So does anyone have a final question for Wendy or myself? We will be sending out extra resources and rank things for you all. Is there anything else I can answer before I mute myself?
Can I just say thank you for you and Wendy giving everyone this information. I think it's great. I also homeschooled for my kids for 8 years, and I think your suggestions were great. I would also add to that, have patience with your children, more patience than you've ever had, and don't treat them like your own children. Treat them like someone else's children when you're trying to do schoolwork with them. And I know that seems like a foreign concept, but it will help. And also to not think that they're going to sit down and do schoolwork for 6 hours like they do at school. Make sure that you do 1 to 2, 1.5 hours of work, and you take a break and you do something else other than school, whether it's reading or have lunch or go outside and play a game. Don't expect your kids to sit there and do school for 6 hours like they do at school.
Yeah, so. That's a really good cooking, science and those creative things. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Kat. Thanks, Wendy. A great presentation and really good discussion as well. With that, if we could like to go ahead and move on, let our district executive, Chris, give some announcements for the council at this point.
Yes, thank you, Ken. All right, so I already covered the youth protection, and that's one of the big things I wanted to kind of reinforce. I also think that it is a great idea for all your kids to probably, take this time to do your Cybership Recharge Kit as well. That covers both Cub Scouts and Scouts BSA age kids. So be a good idea to go on and check that out. So a few announcements. I'm assuming everyone's heard, but I will go ahead and say it again. Our Governor Inslee announced the Stay Home, Stay Healthy order a few days ago, and I just wanted to, that order is going to last for 2 weeks. It could be extended, and that says it requires every Washingtonian to stay home unless they need to pursue an essential activity, banning all gatherings for social, spiritual, and recreational purposes. Obviously, that includes our meetings. Close all businesses except essential businesses. Excuse me. You can still go outside as long as you remain 6 feet from each other. Grocery stores, doctors' offices, other essential businesses will remain open. People can still participate in activities such as bike rides, gardening, dog walking, as long as you follow social distancing rules. So some of my other updates from, say, National BSA and from our council, unfortunately, are a little bit older than Governor Inslee's proclamation. So obviously that takes precedent over anything else. The latest news I got from our national office is that the Boy Scouts of America is asking to suspend gatherings of 10 people or more through the end of March, but also to follow any restrictions outlined by your state or local health department. From our council, so last I heard is that our office is closed. We closed a week and a half ago on that Monday, and the initial plan was to close at least until March 30th. That's this upcoming Monday, and but we would potentially close longer. Now, earlier this week, I received an email saying there's going to be more information at the end of this week. I was really hoping that would come in today. I sent an email out this morning to my Scout executive saying, hey, I got my roundtable this time. I'd love to give them a better update. But pretty much what we have is the last thing that they said is that, that we may open March 30th with a small crew. But my guess is that we will not be opening on March 30th. Obviously, I don't think we're going to be considered an essential business. And as soon as I get that, probably tomorrow, I will be sending it out to all unit leaders and committee chairs as well, with the exact information that I get from our council. Our council employees, we are working from home. Some of our abilities are a little restricted in that regard. I can do just about everything. However, there are some things I can't do. I can't log into ScoutNet, for instance, so I can't. There's just some things I can't have access to. I can't run certain reports. Luckily, that isn't a huge part of my job, but there is a certain restriction there. And for some of our support staff, that's going to affect them a lot harder, like registering actual members as far as applications and stuff. So that's just going to have to be kind of on the back burner for now until we get this taken care of. Other announcements. So our next district event that is still on the calendar is our Alpine Camporee, weekend of May 8th and the 10th. That hasn't been canceled yet. That is definitely a distinct possibility at this point. It's outside of the window of cancellations, which is through the end of April, but it's really close there. So what we have done so far is that we're still doing all the preparations for our camporee. However, we didn't order the patches, for instance. We figured we'd order the patches after the event if we actually have the event. But I think there's probably a good chance we won't be having it. For any kind of cancellation or event, we run the we refund any payments that are done online. That's a really easy thing to do. If you pay by something other than credit card online, then we do a check request and get those checks out to everyone. That's how we handled our last district event that we had to cancel, our Wilderness First Aid training, which was at the beginning of this month. It seems like forever ago. Other news you may have heard, the first session of Camp Parsons and Camp Piggott, that's the Scouts BSA resident camp, hasn't been canceled. This is not due to the COVID-19 virus, but of low signups. So the rest of summer resident camps and our day camps, we're still planning on going ahead as normal. However, we're continuing to monitor the situation, and we will decide if we need to change our schedule as needed to cancel any events to meet any standards. That's pretty much it. It's scouting is, this is kind of a tough time for everyone. We're having a lot of our scout meetings have been postponed, canceled. It's definitely had a big impact on the council's funding. I know I've talked with, shared emails with a number of you that are on here, and or a number of your Friends of Scouting chairs. A lot of the Friends of Scouting presentations were going to happen this month, and those were all canceled. Some of them were going to happen next month, and those have been canceled as well. So we're working on doing a online funding, but we're working on doing an online campaign instead. And I shared all that information, giving you all those tools so we can make that work. I'm always available.
Chris, there's two questions coming on from the chat.
Sorry, I was looking
one
at
is
screen.
Oh, nope, all good. One is what about at the Cub Scout camp at Edwards?
Yes.
What would be the
so that is included in our other resident camps, is that we are still currently planning on having those. Obviously that may change, but as of this moment, there is no change.
Okay, and then the second regarding Wilderness First Aid, whether that will be rescheduled. Ken addressed that. Saying Mount Baker has a WFA class on May 2nd and 9. No immediate rescheduling right now for that for our district. There's also another one. When will the council folks be able to access their network for applications for members and also Eagle applications?
So Mary is still working from home, so she's able to do a certain amount of work and should be in contact with anyone. So I'd say continue doing everything like normal as far as Eagle applications, and going ahead. I know there is a certain amount of work that is able to be done from home. Certain folks are set up to be able to access certain things from home that I am not able to do. I know I sent out a week ago as well information to all the Scouts BSA leaders, unit leaders, about Eagle Scouts and the application process and making your what's it called? Submitting an extension. So all your unit leaders should have that information. If an Eagle Scout is not able to complete something by their 18th birthday, due to the coronavirus, an extension will be granted, and that information has been sent out to your unit leaders. If you don't have it, shoot me an email and I can get that out to you. I see another email from Chris asking if the first week has canceled at Edward. No, that is not the case. The only reason why the first week was canceled at Pig and Parsons were due to low signups. There are not low signups at Edward. Lena, yes. Okay. Are there any other questions for me before we move on to the Scouts PSA? I know we've kind of, we're about 10 minutes behind schedule here. I guess that's per the norm for scouting, so.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. Good information. Probably everybody has lots of questions questions floating around, so I'm glad people can share the information. With that, Eric, if you could go ahead and present or bring up the slide deck I sent you, and then I think Kat or someone had another comment or question. All right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is the Scouts BSA portion. Next slide. All right. There's maybe most of you are probably familiar with this, but the link at the bottom, the BSA National has a website. It's the link at the bottom. It talks about frequently asked questions on in-person unit activities, advancement both for Cub Scouts and Scouts BSA, and venturing and Sea Scouts. You can read through those as they may apply to you.
We don't see anything, Ken.
Okay. Eric Granning is actually presenting it.
Double checking.
I see it.
I can
might have their cursor over where the microphone pops up. If they move their cursor, maybe they'll be able to see it.
No.
It may be the layout. If you go to the three dots in the far right-hand corner, you can change the layout so that you can see a different presenter view.
Thank you.
Okay. A few things to share here. My main theme I want to get across here is I'm hoping that Scouts and their families can continue to do as many things as possible. The worst thing in my mind would be to just have your troop or your crew just to shut down completely. Even if it just means getting online and having an online chat with your committee or your Patrol Leaders Council, just so you can touch base to talk about things maybe you have planned for the summer, a backpacking trip or things like that, and avoid just shutting down altogether, which is easy thing to do. So encourage people to continue to do whatever you can as a unit. I think go back, please. Okay, you'll see a slide here on the BSA National has provided Boys Life is available now for free, at least the last 12 months worth of issues. If you download the Boys Life app from Google Play or the Apple Music Store, get the application. Next slide. All right, another fun event coming up here. Jamboree on the Air and Jamboree on the Internet normally happen in mid-October, and invariably it's always the same weekend as the Program and Training Conference that our council runs. This is an opportunity for Scouts all over the world, not just in the U.S., to get online over the weekend of April 3rd through 5th and connect. Great opportunity to talk with Scouts all over the world. Hey, what are things like in your country or in your city or neighborhood? What kind of things are you doing to be safe and healthy and clean and so forth? Really neat opportunity for Scouts of all ages. So just something to put on the calendar for folks. Next slide. All right. Someone had mentioned earlier online communication tools. Here are some free account features. I don't claim that this is a complete list, but it's a pretty good list. Most of these offer up a more premium version. I work for Boeing. We use WebEx. They have the license for that. But for free, you can get any of these, and you have somehow limits usually in terms of time or number of people or certain features it allows. So currently we're using a Google Hangout, and appreciate Michael Pikolik and Eric Granning for setting this up tonight, which is great. But these are other choices you might want to look at or explore. There's not necessarily right or wrong, and the council's not making any specific recommendations on you have to use this one or that one. Just whatever works for you guys. My own troop, I guess I'd like to consider. We might even consider getting a license or a temporary subscription for one of these, just so we can have a few more options. Okay, next slide. All right, this is what I'll talk about onboarding new scouts. It's an important time of year if your troop is anything like my own. We're literally about halfway through the crossover ceremonies. So a couple of the packs, maybe 3 of them had their ceremony. They've got their new neckerchief and everything, and some of the other units had to cancel theirs or postpone it. So I wanted to share a little bit of advice on this. To avoid having to transfer paper and hand things around, if you're not already using it, you can do online applications through BS Scout. Some troops have been packs of doing this for years, and some folks didn't know it existed. So if you haven't, I encourage your unit to turn that feature on so you can have new scouts and new scouters apply to your unit online. It can be approved online. Bit of advice here. Weeblos can go ahead and enjoy your troop before they've held their crossover ceremony. The PAX 82 that I was part of for a number of years, they were little. I think they were within a day or actually they had an issue with an insurance, but so they were not able to hold their crossover ceremony. But I'd like to get those 5th grade scouts over to join their new troop, whatever troop that is. And they can do that. You can hold the crossover ceremony anytime. The one thing I do want to make sure people are aware is make sure that all the Cub Scout advancement has been recorded in Scout Book or Internet Advancement or whatever tool you use. Once the scout has been processed into their new troop, you can't record any Cub Scout advancements like for Arrow of Light. So if they've completed everything for the Arrow of Light, make sure it does get recorded. And encourage you to have, if you usually have an information for your new scout parents, you encourage go ahead and hold that online so that they know that they're feeling like they want to get engaged in what's happening in their new troop. All right, next slide. Okay. This one from Crystal Holmes. Thank you for sharing. Guideline for virtual communication during social distances. We touched on this a little bit earlier. Thanks, Kat and others. If you're a scout and you want to contact a merit badge counselor or an adult volunteer for whatever reason, make sure that scout is always including a parent or guardian on the email thread for youth protection reasons. If you're using video chat, always should be another person in the room, either virtually or in the room, to introduce them. For example, if one of my sons is working with a merit badge council online, I'll make sure that I'm online and part of the introduction, so I know who that is and who they're working with. Encourage any approval emails so that when you go to click them to your blue card at the end, when we can all meet in person again. Next slide. All right, here's another opportunity. And this is something you'd have to set up within your own unit, perhaps have your SPL reach out to some of the older scouts, but there's an opportunity for your older scouts that are first class or higher to reach out online, maybe get them assigned to 1 or 2 of the new scouts and meet with them online once a week so they can start working on some of their requirements for their scout skill ranks, scout, tenderfoot, second class, first class. Each troop, typically the advancement chair should establish some sort of procedure on how they're tracking those, whether they get an email gets sent or they get logged into Scout Book or otherwise. Next slide. Thank you, Greg. It's a good opportunity for Edge. All right, this was a post on Brian on Scouting. This is a merit badges there are actually 58 merit badges, believe it or not. There are 137, but I believe they're 138. 58 of those can be completed from home. They meet the 2 following criteria. They don't involve a visit to a public place or a company, and the requirements can be completed indoors or in an average-sized yard. And so everything that's listed there are ones that, in theory, a scout could complete if they wanted to. And the link over to the right side there in that box is the link to that. Next slide. All right, online merit badge classes. And there are probably many more than that. These are ones that I've been run across. Number of the councils across the country have set up online classes, almost like classroom type affairs, where you could sign up for it online, and it's being offered, 4 days in a row for an hour or an hour and a half, or might be set up as a merit badge fair just for 3 or 4 hours in a row, whatever, online. And you can look some of these up if you have scouts that are interested in pursuing something and working on something online. I would encourage you as a unit to figure out how you would handle that, to make sure the scout knows what information he or she would need to get to show that they've completed work on that merit badge. All right, a couple more slides here. All right, how to conduct a board review. So this is something you're going to have to start, and that's if it's an Eagle board review, local council has to approve it. We do have that approval. Go to the next slide, please. I'll come back in a minute. All right, now this, if I were a scout looking for a board review, man, this is a rough looking crowd here. This was actually held earlier this week. This is the first Eagle board review. It was held online this Monday, courtesy of Dave Clemens. So we had a scout, and he came through with flying colors, which is great. So if we are setting those up, you could do something similar for your troop. If you have a scout that's up for a rank. I was actually on a board review for my own troop this last Monday for a scout who had completed all the requirements for STAR. So if you could go up one, please, back one slide. Hey, Eric. Yep, thank you. All right, two things, a handful of things I do want people to keep in mind if you are going to hold a board review, or for that matter, a Scoutmaster conference. I encourage you to test all the equipment ahead of time in terms of lighting, what people see in the background. Make sure everybody's visible. If there's a scout that's going to be there, he should be able to see everybody he's talking to, he or she. When the board review starts, either a parent or guardian, or has to be 2 registered adult leaders, would have to be there present in person with the scout to kind of introduce and make sure they know who they're talking with. So just for awareness. Video conference must not be recorded. No one should be. Some of the online tools do have that feature, usually with the pay versions. And of course, there's an appeal, as with any board review. That's covered in the guide for advancement. Next slide. Back, make it 2 slides. All right, a few online resources. I got Wendy McBride. Thanks for passing these along. There was a scouting from home session that PSA National Marketing put on today at 11 today, and I was on the audio version, but the online version filled up with 300 people. So there's a lot of interest and demand for this. So there's some online resources. I'll have this presentation shared with folks on the call, or maybe on the district website, see how you can have access to this. And I think there's one more slide, or maybe that was it. Yep, that's it. So with that, I want to open up. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or if it's just things you want to discuss, that would be great. Let's see, I'm going to go and answer a couple of these. I see the cooking merit badge completed at home. That's a good question. There's a lot of things one can do with the cooking. This is William Sineko's question about the cooking merit badge. And obviously there are some requirements have to be done. The cooking has to be done during camping or on a trail or backpacking. So again, you could complete, 80 or 90% of it, and a lot of the planning for cooking, but maybe a few of those things would have to wait until you can have a camp out. Other questions, or it could be either on the chat or on, let's see, or do you have your family take take a video. Yes, that's for Krista Holmes. Yes, you could certainly have your family take a video and present it to the merit badge counselor. Any form of proof that they've completed the work with a photo, a video, or otherwise. That's great. Or slides, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Wendy is sending me a bunch of numbers. I'm not sure what that means. So, other questions?
Hey Ken, this is Chris again. So I found the email about the Eagle Advancement extension that I sent out to all the Scoutmasters and Troop Committee chairs last week, and I was going to go ahead and share that real quick since there are a few people asking about that.
Okay, great, thank you.
So here's the email. We've already had several requests from Eagle Scout candidates for time extensions to complete work on the Eagle Scout Service Project due to the impacts associated with the coronavirus social distancing guidelines. If an Eagle Scout candidate is impacted by the coronavirus in completing their Eagle Scout Service Project or possibly work on merit badges, the Eagle Scout candidate, their parents, unit leader, or unit committee member can file a request letter for extension of time to earn the Eagle Scout rank. The requirements of this letter are outlined in the Guide to Advancement, and the letter should be emailed to John Paget, who is our advancement staff advisor. If at all possible, Eagle project reviews and approvals should be performed via a teleconference call with the Eagle Scout candidate. Please ensure that the Scout has another person with them for 2D leadership requirements. Scanned signatures on the proposal signature pages are acceptable. Also, board reviews can be completed by video conferences. The council has granted permission as long as the requirements of the Guide to Advancement are met. I know one of your slides says that the council, you need to get council permission. The council has granted kind of a blanket permission during this time for those. Eagle Scout applications may be submitted to the council via email and PDF format to membership@seattlebsa.org. Fax and mail still work as well as the alternatives. Details can be found on our website. Note that these do not need to be submitted prior to the Scout's 18th birthday. Council recommendation is within 2 weeks of their birthday. Obviously, our registrars won't be processing Eagle Scout applications during an unforeseen period. Eagle border reviews can be held up to 6 months after the 18th birthday. For border reviews beyond 6 months, approval for national will be requested and it will be granted due to the impacts of the coronavirus. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thanks, Chris. Good advice. A couple other good bits of information that came across here. I'm just reading through the chat here. Make sure folks are aware there are going to be some requirements you simply can't do. When you're working from home or nearby, and that's okay. But there's an awful lot of things you can do. Other thing is if you have a Scout or adults, encourage you to make sure wearing your uniform for a Scoutmaster conference or a board review. You may be sitting in the privacy of your own living room or office, but should still set an example for our Scouts if you're holding a formal Scouting event. Any other questions, either in writing or verbally?
The slides are you going to send them out? I didn't hear. I missed it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I sent a copy of it to Eric Granning and Chris. So Chris McNeil, could you send the slide deck that I sent off a little before the meeting tonight all to the Scoutmasters and committee chairs for each of the units in the district?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Do appreciate that. Yeah. So everybody should get a copy of that. It's just obviously you've seen what we walked through today, but there's a lot of links there that maybe you might find useful.
I have a couple of examples of something that works.
Please, that'd be great. Love to hear about it.
I'm Travis Johnson, Scoutmaster for the new Troop 695, and I had a telephone call with one of the Scouts that kind of wanted to get a regrouping of where he was and what he needed to do. And So his mom and he contacted me and set a time for him to have this tele-chat, or I guess just a telephone call. And his mom was in the room with him, and I was able to help him through a couple of merit badges, as I'm a counselor for some things too. And just tell him, hey, here's what you need to work on for your next rank. And it was a great opportunity to just do something over the phone. My son, as a second example, he was able to contact a merit badge counselor and do his genealogy merit badge over video chat. I think they used FaceTime, and he had already gone to the center to be able to qualify for the one requirement. But everything else he did at home, and he was able to chat with her, and she passed him off online. I have the blue card, and sometime later we'll have her go ahead and sign it.
So you can put pen to paper once you guys are in person. But obviously, he was able to complete all the work for the merit badge. That's great.
Yeah, and she actually went in online on scoutbook.com and signed him off.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's ultimately what will be for the digital record. That's the database of records. So that's great. Thanks, Travis. Glad to see Troop 695 is still doing things even online.
I can share some comments. Troop 709 here. We had a PLC last night, and so it was our first foray with 10 scouts all trying to interact with each other online, and it was quite an event. Definitely for a PLC, it was hard for them to practice going on mute when they weren't talking because they were always trying to contribute at the same time. They found themselves very distracted with things like the chat function. So finding ways that you can find possibly tools that don't have the side chat windows. We discovered later a lot of the scouts actually opened up their own private Discord channels on the side to have conversations about other scouts. So making sure you have several adults that can help be aware of what's going on and keep them focused on, maybe productive parts of the meeting. But I'm thinking the troop meetings or in the patrol meetings, they're going to opt to go for more patrol meetings virtual than troop meetings virtual. But hopefully they're a little easier during the educational skill part. But we'll see.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Did you guys have any sort of was the SPL facilitating it, or was it sort of just an open discussion? My own troop has not done an online PLC yet, although I'm trying to encourage that. And the group is somewhat larger than that, and I'm concerned about it just being kind of a free-for-all. So,
well, our PLC was the first online activity we did because, I wanted the boys to decide what troop online activities they wanted to schedule, right? Part of the chaos was just because they're very used to a PLC where they throw it up on a whiteboard, and they're used to skill game. Each patrol does a opening flag or a skill or a game or a closing flag. And so it was our SPL was facilitating and took them 10, 15 minutes to kind of get that Excel open and shared so everybody could see his desktop. And so that was the whiteboard that was being used for the meeting. But possibly having maybe a 10-minute call ahead of time would have helped get that part of the meeting going a little faster. But, as with any Boy Scout meeting, let them have a little bit of chaos to figure out how to start moving. And then by the end of the meeting, they had just an overabundance of ideas, and then they were struggling to pick which ones to go with.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. Any other thoughts or things people want to share tonight?
One thing that I've experienced, if Zoom is an option for you, they do offer whiteboard functionality and things like that. Some of the other services like WebEx and stuff like that do as well. So if that's a method that the PLC likes to use, that may be a good way to approach the meetings. Keep that same flow going.
Thanks, Eric. Great. Anybody else are on the call? Looks like Crystal Holmes said they did the Troop 498 and 898 updated their merit badge process to include instructions about doing virtual communication process, and completing requirements. That's good.
I did that to Scoutmaster Bucky. It says it's not a secure site.
Okay, that's good advice. Thank you. The items that I put in the spreadsheet or in my presentation, I don't, other than ones that are on BSA websites, either from BSA National or from one of the councils. The other ones that I've provided there are, I'll just say, are at your own risk. I've seen them. They look like it has useful information, but obviously the ones that are official BSA websites, either national or councils, wherever in the country, would be the ones would be preferred. Thanks for catching that up, Mike. Okay, I think that's unless someone else has anything else tonight. We will still have our roundtable on the 9th of April. It'll probably be the same format or something very similar to it. And we'll be holding the district commissioner meeting and committee meeting next Thursday on the 2nd of April. But again, it'll be online. So watch for more information coming your way in your email queue. Anyone else around the table or the call? Well, this is great. It's a really great turnout. I think we peaked out at 33 or 34 people on the call, which is a great turnout for a roundtable night, which I was glad to see. And so I know that some ways this is easier, so you don't save you having to leave your house. But I am looking forward to when we can get together in person, because it's nice to be able to talk face to face as well. With that, that's all I have tonight. So thank you for joining. Great discussion. Thanks for sharing everything. We'll talk again in 2 weeks. Take care.